Hello and welcome everyone to our Laserfiche webinar from Cities Digital. It's time to go green. We'll give everybody a chance to join in. For those who registered and are just joining us, we'll start in just a moment. Just want to give those people a chance to join into our session. We will start shortly. Hope everybody's having a great day, and it's almost the end of the week, so hope you enjoy this webinar. Like I said, we'll give our attendees just a couple more moments to join up and we'll get started. Start our webinar here. And so the topic of today's webinar is it's time to go green. Some tips to help reduce paper for that user. In other words, the user who tends to use paper rather than digital documents. We'll go ahead through some different scenarios. We'll go ahead and take a look at that. My name is Kyle Nebel from Cities Digital. I'm the technical trainer here and proud to present our topic here today for you all. So the topics today are going to be the following. We are going to take a look at how we might use scanning in place of routing paper mail in the office. We might also cover the we will cover the topic of using Laserfiche Snapshot to print documents directly to Laserfiche rather than printing out an email and then scanning it and putting into Laserfiche as well. Another topic today is using Word, Excel, or Outlook in order to capture, save, or do version control on documents. We'll take a look at the Laserfiche Office integration that is available to us. We'll also look at how we might use Laserfiche Workflow to route documents digitally instead of routing paper documents around the office via our own 2 feet and make our lives quicker, faster, and much more efficient. And finally, we'll take a look at how we might use DocuSign and the Cities Digital DocuSign integration to digitally sign documents instead of printing out a document and signing it and then scanning it back in and sending it off. So those 5 topics here are up for today. Our first topic is how we might use Laserfiche scanning in place of routing paper mail. So the idea here is if you've got an office mail room, for example, and we want to get our mail to our users rather quickly, we'll open up our mail, but then we'll scan that mail and then into Laserfiche, assign a template with some information about the employee name, and that way we can route that document to the employee into a folder they might have set up in Laserfiche, and then use that to notify them as well if we want to do that. What we've done here in the demo is we will have a drop-down list of employees. We want to probably do that in our own environment. That way we can choose who it's going to, and based on that information or that employee chosen, we can set up emails that go to that user when you've assigned this metadata to the document, and it may route and send emails, all using a workflow that we've built. So that email that workflow can even send a link to the document that would open up Laserfiche and take them to that document. Instead of having to send an email with an attachment, we can save space on the email server without having to take up that space because we're sending a document. We can just send a link in that email. All right. So that's our first topic. Let's take a quick look at how that might work in our repository. We'll go ahead and open up our repository. And I've logged in as a scanning user. And we'll go ahead and assume that we've got a letter that just came into the office, and we want to scan that document. I'm going to launch basic scanning mode here. And that scan module will launch, and I can put the paper in the scanner. We'll pretend that we've got our letter that we need to send to an employee, and we'll scan that document. At this point, not only will we scan the document, we will be able to even assign a template so that the document is routed appropriately. At this point, you could choose to use the, for example, I've created a template called mail, and that way we can choose the employee's name from the drop-down list, and that will preset their email address and even send it to a particular folder that is pre-designed and pre-designated to send the document into the employee's folder that they can see. I'm going to skip this for now because I'll show you what it looks like from the back end. So we'll hit done, and that means the document drops into our incoming scans folder. I scanned it as untitled, but why don't we assign some metadata to the document, and like I said, we'll set it for mail, and I'll choose an employee's name. For example, we'll choose this user. Notice it automatically fills in their email address and folder. Now you're asking yourself, how is this happening? Well, we're using Laserfiche's dynamic fields in this example so that we do a list value here that's in a database table, which then fills in the other fields with the appropriate information. And then workflow can use these two fields to email the employee and file the document into that employee's Laserfiche folder. So having just switching around, we'll choose a different name. You can see the folder names change depending on who you choose. I've got my email address in here just for our demo purposes, but it would obviously be different for each employee. Go ahead and click OK on this template, and workflow will take that document and it will route the document. In this case, it even renamed it, and the workflow could also send an email. I don't have my email configured at the moment, so my workflow won't actually send an email, but assume that it did. Your employee would receive a message with a link to the document, and they can open up the document directly from that link. And those document links could be either through to a web client view or the desktop client view, depending on how you implement Laserfiche in your environment. If you've just got web client users, you could have workflow send a web client link to the user. If you've got the desktop client, you can send a link in the email to the desktop client. Pretty darn easy. Now, these documents will sit there and the user can do what they want at this point. So that was a great little example there of routing documents or an email to a user. All right, we'll bring our screen back up. Our next topic is using Snapshot instead of printing emails. If we have a document, for example, that we're viewing, or we want to print something that's like a report, we can do that instead of having to print it out and scan it. All right, we'll take a look at that next as far as that goes. And by the way, if you have any questions or want to post a message in the chat window, I'm watching that as we go through this. So Laserfiche, with the desktop client, there is a tool that gets installed called Laserfiche Snapshot, and we can print documents to Laserfiche from there. In fact, this screen itself, if I'm going to print this page, I could just do a print, which then would bring up Laserfiche's or my print dialog. And I'll show you an example of that here. And as you can see, I've set the dialog to change the document to grayscale, but you can choose to print in whatever option you want using Laserfiche Snapshot. So from your printer list, you would see your normal printers, but then you could choose the Laserfiche Snapshot option. Once you've chosen that, how many pages you want to print, whichever one you want to print, you can do that. Make your choice. as to what you want to print, you can hit the print button, which then should launch the Laserfiche interface. There we go. And you could tell it what the folder path would be. You can change that folder path and define which folder you want this document to be scanned into. You can change the title of the document. You can assign a template and or individual fields to the document as well. And as you can see at the top, there's some tabs, and you can even set tags and define how the document would be managed when it goes into Laserfiche. For example, if this document name already exists, do you want to have Laserfiche automatically apply a number 2 in parentheses on the end of the document because that same document name exists in the same folder in which you're scanning into. At this point, we're going to leave everything the same and just put it into our incoming scans folder. We'll click OK, and it prints that very quickly. So if we go back and look at our incoming scans folder, there's that snapshotted, quote unquote, document. And we can set, the document viewer opened up. And as you can see, I printed out the whole document. You can choose to print however many pages you want. And I did choose grayscale, so you can make your choice as you see fit. And there's your document as it came in using Laserfiche Snapshot. So this saves us from having to print something and scan it. We can just print, quote unquote, directly to Laserfiche as if we were scanning, but it's kind of a virtual scan option. A wonderful little tool there available to us with the Laserfiche application. All right. The Laserfiche client also comes with the Laserfiche Office integration, and that allows us to see a Laserfiche tab in the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook applications. So the ability in the client these applications allows us to send documents to Laserfiche. We can save them. We can do version control on documents that are already in Laserfiche that we open up and edit so that we can handle scenarios where we want to work directly with a document in Office, but then save it to Laserfiche. So let's take a look at that real quick. All right. So in our client, for example, we might have a document that we want to open. And best practice, I'm going to do that right here, is to check out that document using Laserfiche's check-in and check-out. Now, why do I say this? Because you could double-click on the document, which will just open it up. However, if you're on a network connection or working from home or over a VPN, and that connection drops, there's a real problem when that happens. We might not be able to save that document back into Laserfiche, even though the connection comes back up, because it's really that connection's broken. But if you check out a document, it actually lives locally on your computer so that you can make your edits for as long as you want. Technically, this is also when you might want to check out a document and take it along for a business trip and edit it offline, and then when you get back or connect up to the office, you can check the document back in. All right. So this is another option. Now, before I proceed a bit too far down this demonstration, there was a question on my previous subject about Snapshot, and will Snapshot bring in attachments with emails? Well, if you're printing an email or any kind of document with Snapshot, it's just going to generate what it can see. We'll talk about email and attachment handling here in our Office integration discussion here. So good question, and we'll take a look at that, okay? So our Office document is here. We can go ahead and check that out, which will then download and ask us, hey, where do you want to put it? Normally it creates a folder called My Laserfiche Documents, and that's where the document will live. And we do want to open the Office document immediately. I'm going to open up a Word document, and we'll watch as that goes. Notice there's a little edit icon on the document, and everybody will see this when it's checked out, and they will be able to even see the name of the user who checked out that document. Okay, so we have our Office document here, and you'll notice at the top, on the just above the ribbon bar, we have the Laserfiche tab available to us. Now, this document was already in Laserfiche, so we could start with a new document in Word, or open a document from Laserfiche if we wanted to. There's going to be the Laserfiche tab. So you'll always end up in the ribbon bar now. Notice it changed because I clicked on the Laserfiche tab. The ability here to save the document back to Laserfiche. And if you click on this option, you'll get, for the document that was already in Laserfiche, you have some options already. If it's a brand new document and you're going to save it into Laserfiche and it's not in Laserfiche yet, you would only get the Save as New Document option. But because we opened it from Laserfiche, we do get another choice here. So do I want to overwrite the existing document? Do I want to create a new version of this document to store? So we'll go ahead and edit this. My edits for our demo, for example. And now we could save this as a new version. And Laserfiche does give you the opportunity to add any comments or version labels, but these are not required. I'm not going to make any here myself. We'll go ahead and click OK. Now, you can still continue editing the document. You can even update metadata on the document itself. It gives you the option there to change metadata on the document. As you can see here, you can assign or change metadata templates and fields. If they're already assigned, you can do that. And you might notice on the Versions tab, you do have that the original document came in and there's a second version here. Why is the second version in bold? That means that's the default document that will open when you double click on the document. It always will open, usually it'll open up the most recent version. However, if you come into the metadata and click on versions, you can actually open up in any other previous version if you wanted to do that. And you can even compare changes between versions and even edit the details of the comments and or version labels. Really cool functionality here in the Versions tab there. I'm not going to make any changes on the metadata, but what we'll do is, so we've now saved it as a new version. So under version control, all you have to do is close the Word or Excel document, PowerPoint, whatever it may be. And when you do that, it says, do you want to check in the document, which we probably do. So we'll go ahead and do that. Again, it does ask for more version comments and or version labeling if you want. You don't have to do that. And we'll click OK. We'll let our document close out, and then we'll see here, notice the rollover tells us who's got the document checked out, and everybody else will see this as well until it's checked back in. So I'll do a quick refresh. Notice it's now checked back in, and if we view the metadata, we'll be able to see under versions, we had several different edits. Pretty cool. And if you double click, you'll be able to see that same option, or if you download the and check it out, you'll have the document to check out. All right, and it'll download the most recent version for checkout. All right, so that saves us time and effort on that. The Office integration will work in, like I said, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook. Now the Outlook integration, I didn't mean to launch that. We'll launch my Outlook here. And in Outlook, it looks a little different. And in that view, we'll go ahead and take a look. Give me a moment. Okay, we'll bring over our sample file. I've hidden my folders so that we can see that. But as we have our Office integration in the Outlook email, we can see we have an email that came in, and we've got a document with an email with an attachment as well. So if we click on the Laserfiche tab, we can then see that we have a way of handling attachments for emails. If you want to just import the email, you can save it to Laserfiche, and that saves everything. You can, when you import, you can choose a couple options. The Laserfiche client, having been open, and the integration, it's aware of what folder you're in. So as you can see, it even gives you an opportunity to save the document to the folder that you had already navigated into. Users may also have been set up with a default folder. Now, this isn't typical. There is a way to do that. There is a Laserfiche directory that has default folders that each user can be set up with. We can help you with that if that's something you need to do. It does require that we get into the Laserfiche workflow designer tool in order to do that. Don't ask me why, but you can set up each user's default folder if you want to do that. The other two options are save attachments to Laserfiche and save attachment to that default folder. And this would be the attachment only. And you can even pick which attachment. Notice I have two attachments in here. So if I wanted to save an attachment to Laserfiche, it gives me a choice. In fact, my email also has some image attachments, and we probably don't want to do that. So maybe we just want to save one attachment. You could save that. You could control click and save two attachments. Click OK, and then it'll ask you where it wants to, which folder you want to save it to, because you do have an option. And you can even apply metadata to that attachment as well. If you don't do that, you can just do the save to or save to Laserfiche, which saves the entire email, which then should also give you an option of the how you want to deal with the attachments. Do you want to separate them and save them as a separate file, as well as keep them in the original email, or take the attachment out of the original email, but save the original email and the attachment as separate files? So Laserfiche gives you quite a few options when you're dealing with these emails and the attachments. Many people just like to save the attachments, but there are options in here as well. Okay, so that's really good. There is a question about the Office integration and how to deal with a user who might be working remotely, and you double click on a Word document instead of downloading it through the checkout process, and what happens when the connection is broken. The issue there is going to be, if you try and close the document, it won't know that Laserfiche is still there. You'll then have to, and you have to pay attention because the message is not quite obvious. Sometimes it's difficult to understand what's going on. So what ends up happening is you'll get a weird message like Laserfiche isn't available. So you'll go ahead and do a file save as, and you'll have to save that file as a new file locally somewhere in your system. And then once you've done that, when you've got your connection back up, you'll have to drag and drop that document back into Laserfiche. You might be able to drag and drop it onto the original document you started with, and then tell it to save as a new version. All right. It just, without checking out the document, a dropped connection just is not a very well handled situation by Laserfiche, because we didn't open up the document in that manner. We just kind of were, if you double click on it, I would have you assume that it's pretty much read only, or you're just viewing things. If you're going to do lots of edits on an Office document, I highly recommend checking it out and make that part of your process. It just saves a headache. And even if you have a very solid network connection, it's still a good habit and good process. All right. So how do you know there is a connection issue with the document? Well, when you go to close the document, it'll say Laserfiche isn't there. You want to save the file. So you better save the file. So sometimes people see that, do you want to save your file? And you're like, well, no, it's going to save into Laserfiche. No, that's not true. It actually will probably not. So if you say no and discard things, your edits will have been for naught. So again, best practice is to do that. All right. So that covers some of our options available to us when using the Office integration. All right. So using that, we just saw what it does there. All right. Here's the next fun little trick is how do we route documents via Laserfiche and workflow instead of routing paper documents around by using our interns or staff to move documents and walk them into somebody's inbox in another office. So we're going to go from the paper world to the digital world, and we're going to talk about how we route documents for review. Okay. One, we're going to use templates and fields. So in other words, this is driven by metadata on documents in Laserfiche. And it really is going to be very fast, right? We don't have to wait for somebody to get moving around and pick up documents from some office and move them to somebody else's office. And we can even assign history and make that visible on fields if we want to, okay? I haven't added that in my system, but I can do that really quickly and even show you how that works. And for all of us who are approving documents, it's very easy to use. So let's take a look at how that might work. For example, I had a document come in, and that's sitting in my mailbox. And I'm going to change the metadata on this real quick, and so that I can route it. So let's go click on Fields, and I'm going to change it to my routing template. And as you can see, we've got our info in here, and that employees folder is listed in here. Okay, now as you can see, the default value is on this approval field is set for pending. Now you could set it for, and then the user, all they have to do is say, yeah, it's approved, rejected, or just leave it as is for the time being unless they need to do something. I'm going to click OK and leave it on pending. My workflow is designed so that it starts from the incoming scans folder, but our workflow engine can certainly be modified to really not care where it starts. Let's see. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to move it because it does not actually care. It only cares if the change was made to the value of the approval setting. So for example, I'm going to approve this. All right, and maybe now I want to approve it and send it to somebody else. So I could change the user. So now it's going to go to their demo, my mail demo folder for this particular employee. So we'll click OK. And Laserfiche should route that document away. So as we can see, it disappeared. It's not in my incoming scans folder. And so the scan user or the demo user actually just got this document. Okay, so let's go ahead and sign out real quick and then sign in as our demo user. And let's go see if that document, so there's the document that had been, as you can see, I've been testing. As you can see, there's the document that we just changed and sent to our demo user. And if we look at the metadata, well, let me bring that over. We can see that workflow reset the pending value or the value back to pending because it was already approved somewhere else. And now we can change that value. So workflow, it can be used in many different ways. Right, so we could have different types of approval values in this drop-down list. and that may define how a document gets routed. We could change any of these fields to function in combination. Maybe we'd have a preset workflow that regardless of who it went to when their approval is set, it goes to another person predefined, right? So I'm using a more dynamic method here, but we can do that. Now there's a question that's come up. Can we set the approval field so that only certain people can approve documents? Yes, in fact, any field or even a template can be hidden from your users or a group of users. So this field may not be visible to some employees, especially if they're looking at it from a certain point of view or it's come into a different folder, okay? We might even hide the template itself or just the field so that they can see everything but that field. Therefore, they can't set a value by mistake and therefore cause the document to route. So great question on that. So that's an example of using Laserfiche's workflow to route documents for approval. Now, what we could also do is, in fact, add a field for tracking history and who set the value, what the value was, what the employee name was set for, and when that event occurred. Many times what we'll do is we'll go and add a field on our template. Maybe it's like a notes or a comments field. All right, and we'll go ahead and take a look at that. So now I just added a comments field, but what we could then do is build our workflow such that the workflow not only will, and we'll take a look at the workflow designer here since we have this opportunity. As you can see, it reset the value, but we can even set a field. For example, we'll go look for the comments field, and we can then say under comments, edited on, and then we could use a piece of information like today's time, date and time, status equals, and then we'll take our value from our whatever we want from our document, and that might be, we might have to add something here, another step. So somebody sets the value and then that document routes. So we might have to do a retrieve, route, and then, now in this case, this document is actually routing because it was set for approved and only launches and runs when that is set. So we'll just type that in. And approved on and approved by. And we can even put the user from our task. And that to do that, that takes a little bit of an extra step, which I should actually just show you right here. It's the find user task. And you can put that anywhere prior to this. And it'll be a, oh, I need to choose my user, and we'll just use the initiator of the workflow. So the person who's making this workflow trigger, that's the initiator. And so we can then use that value in our next step and say it's approved by, and then we can choose the find user activity and use their display name so that we can fill in our comments. Go ahead and publish that. And then we can go route this around. So for example, we'll go ahead and we'll route it back. Let's say it's going to be approved, and we'll change it back to Mookie. Click OK. And that document routes back. So let's log out. Oh, all right. So my client sometimes crashes on me. Let's see. A couple questions while we're waiting for my client to launch. One question is, can you list multiple approvers in sequential order? We can use workflow to do that. If you want to just have it chained together in the back end where nobody sees it, they just see, you know, their inbox, so to speak, fill in with a document, and then they just hit approve. You could have individual fields for each approver where they have those 3 values, and it's approved for user A, approval for user B, etc. But there are ways to handle multiple approvers and sequence them appropriately. It just depends on which is best for you. And then another question is, when you add a note or comment section, is there a character limit? In Laserfiche, the maximum character limits in a text field is 4,000 characters. So theoretically, probably not. If you the limit of 4,000 characters certainly lets you fill in as much as you need. Usually you'll probably never have a problem with that. Let's go ahead and log in as our scan user and go look in our mail scan. And there's our document. Let's see what the metadata says. And notice workflow filled in the comments. Now, we could even make this comments field a read-only field for our users, and workflow would automatically fill that in. Okay, so we can add history on via workflow as to who did what as it's being routed around. And we can make this comments field a multi-value field so that we can have multiple pieces of history coming in, right? So you might have comments, but then several different events that have been tracked in here, and making it read-only. Therefore, your users can see the history of who's been approving it along the way. So really kind of a neat little tool there. We love doing that. We use Laserfiche forms for some of this, and many times we transition from this kind of process to forms and then just store a final document. But if you want to do it this way, this is another wonderful way to use Laserfiche's workflow engine within the repository side of things. Okay, so that is our method of approving documents via workflow as they exist in the Laserfiche repository. Good stuff. All right, and we're now up to our final topic. Oh, by the way, in any time you use workflow, you can set up escalation and deadlines in the workflow to remind people that they haven't approved something yet. So you can put timers on your workflow so that it is paying attention to that document. And if it doesn't route out at a certain point, you can notify somebody that, especially the person who just received it, that they have not reviewed the document and set their approval settings. The question is, can you list history in a different field other than comment? Yes, I just chose the comment field. You could create any field that you want, call it what you want, as long as it's a text field, and then let workflow fill in the text in that text field. I called my field comment. You could have called it notes, anything you want. So certainly no limitations in that regard, as long as it's a text field and you're not putting in more than 4,000 characters of text in that field. And even if it's a multi-value field, right? So your notes or comments field is multi-value. That's for each entry in the comment. So 4,000 characters is your max, but you could have several 4,000 character entries in that multi-value field. So really flexible. I don't think you'll ever have any issues with that. But that is an idea or two for you as well for Laserfiche. And routing documents via workflow. Another question is, how do you change the field and increase the number of characters in that text field? There is a Laserfiche administration console. Your Laserfiche administrator will be able to go into that field and increase the size of that field from whatever character limit it currently is set at to something larger. Now, do you want to make it smaller? I don't recommend that. Why? Because you could cut off data. Let's say you have a 100-character field and you make it smaller, and you already have a field that was filled out and it has all 100 characters filled in. If you change it to 50 characters, you'll lose 50 characters off the end of that data. So you can always go bigger, right? So make it from 100 characters to 4,000 or whatever you need to do. That's no problem. But that is all done in the Laserfiche administration console. Usually that's found on the Laserfiche server or a workstation on which it was installed. Your Laserfiche administrator certainly will be able to help you and get that changed if you need to do that. All right. And that should not cause any adverse problems with workflow or anything else, unless there is a workflow that's expecting only a certain amount of characters in there. Okay. All right. And our final topic today is, how do we use DocuSign for digital signing instead of scanning a signed document after we've applied a wet signature, because we had to print out the document, sign it, scan it, etc. Well, Laserfiche has allows us to send DocuSign documents for signing very simply. So that is our next topic. And CDI has a DocuSign integration for both the web client and the Windows client. And in the cloud, there is a DocuSign integration, but that's Laserfiche's integration. It works very similar, but I think the one thing you don't get in the cloud is with our integration, we have workflow activities that can allow you to automatically send and obtain DocuSigned documents using Laserfiche workflow. Now, my example here today will cover just a small example using the Windows client and a manual process, but be aware that the CDI DocuSign integration does include workflow activities as well. Now, to do this, we do need a DocuSign seat license. In other words, we need to be able to create an account, and it does need at least one for one user. If you have multiple users, usually you'll have to buy multiple seat licenses. There are some exceptions, but that's usually the rule. All right, so that is our next example. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we do that. Since we have a document here, I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to change the metadata, and I'm going to use my DocuSign template. Let's make sure that my email address is in here, because DocuSign will send a notification to the user saying, hey, you have a document for signing, and we need to make sure that that is in here. And I've used a template here that is going to pass these values to DocuSign on our behalf. Now, we can do that manually. We don't have to use this particular method, but we'll go ahead and set this up. So citiesdigital.com is my address. Make sure I have that typed in correctly. Now, you'll see in a moment in the DocuSign system, we normally have a recipient name and email address. And we'll also need a subject as well. So we need to make sure that we are entering these as well. If you have DocuSign, but not the integration, you'll need to just get the Laserfiche DocuSign integration from CDI and get that installed and configured. And then you can use any accounts that you have for DocuSign to do this. Now, when you sign a DocuSign, and when you're doing DocuSigning here, the document goes up to DocuSign, which then is signed by your recipient. And then once they've signed it, that document comes back into Laserfiche. So the person signing the document, in other words, your clients, for example, won't have to have Laserfiche. They get access to this document to sign through the DocuSign application. So it's very easy. They'll get an email, they'll just click a link, they'll be able to open the document in DocuSign, sign it, and then once they've signed it, it then comes down to us here in our Laserfiche repository. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK and set our template and our metadata on there. And as you can see, I've got a bit of a couple toolbar icons on here, and I'm going to send this document to Laserfiche. Now, DocuSign calls it an envelope. Just like in the real world, a letter envelope may have one or more letters or documents in that one envelope. And the same goes for Laserfiche. I could send multiple documents in one envelope to DocuSign. So we're going to do that and go ahead and click on our little link here. It will tell us it's generating the envelope, which then will take us to our DocuSign site. All right, now I've already pre-configured my button so that it automatically logs me in. And if you take a look here, this is kind of neat. If you've never seen DocuSign before, this will be a neat little primer. As you can see, it already put in my recipient information here. You can see it grabbed from that template those two pieces of information, the name and email. Now this is pre-configured. We do have to do some configuration, but you can add additional recipients if you need to do that, if you need multiple people to sign either all at the same time or one after the other. DocuSign gives you some really neat functionality here. We won't get into that, but we'll assume maybe there's just one signer here in this example, and that's all good to go. So now that that's set, we can then pick from these standard fields, right? We'll put our signed field and our date signed field, and we'll then go ahead and down at the bottom right corner, we'll send this to our recipient. Okay, now obviously I will get this email with a link to this document so that I can sign it. Now, since I'm the same person that is logged in that is also receiving this signed document, you might actually be wondering, what does that email look like and how do we get that? So what happens is we get a email that looks like this, and you'll have a little button to click on the review document, right? So what that does is it takes you to DocuSign's site, and then you can sign, and then the recipient will sign it, right? So they'll just see, oh, hey, we'll go ahead and hit continue. We'll click sign, hit finish, and now that client that you sent this document for DocuSigning, they got, all they did was have to click the sign button and they're good to go. Very simple from their perspective. All right. Now that the document is signed, it will then come back into the Laserfiche repository, and you'll be then able to see that it was dropped in there. And normally it comes back as a PDF. Now, in my environment, I don't have a way of allowing DocuSign to send it back into my system because I don't have my computer out on the public internet. The DocuSign integration does require that there's a component in the DocuSign integration that is going to be on a server that is public facing. As I said, my system doesn't have that. So normally what would happen is you would then see another second document drop in that is in PDF form with that signature on it. And if you want to take a look at what that looks like, I'll just open it up here. And there's our signed document. Let me zoom in here real quick. Give it a second. As you can see, there's our signed document with our date, and it even has a kind of interesting information here. And it has this very unique code, on that signature. So you can verify that it was signed and it is trackable. So DocuSign gives us lots of information. So this is a PDF that came back in that would normally be in our Laserfiche repository in the same folder in which it started from. Now we can set it to route to some other folder within our configuration, but normally we like to see the signed document come back into the same folder, so you would see a second copy with the same name, slightly different, and then as a PDF. All right. Now, in my case, the document didn't. I did not choose. Well, the question, somebody has a great question. Does the completed DocuSign document also include the completion certificate? Well, you can actually choose what you want to include as it comes back. You can choose to include the completion certificate or not, which is fun. Most of the time people do choose to do that, and we can then have that included in the PDF. I think we can also make it a separate document if we want, so that you have two different documents. Just depends on how you want to do that. And sometimes we'll use workflow to do all of that for us, so that that signed document kind of shows up automatically and splits it out and keeps a copy of the certificate somewhere else if you need to do that. So we can be fairly sophisticated when it comes to our DocuSign items. And then the final question is, does Laserfiche provide a copy of the signed document to the signer? Well, actually, DocuSign provides it to the signer, so they can get a copy. So normally they get an email. In fact, you saw me, well, actually I double-clicked on an email. So I get an email from DocuSign that shows me that I have an attachment. So let me open that up. And so when I signed the document, as you can see here, there's the signer gets the attachment. So they can see it both at DocuSign's site, but they also get a downloadable copy as well. All right. So another question is, let's see, can a workflow be built to delete the original document? Yes, certainly anything you want to do, we can do that. The original document wouldn't be deleted because it's also probably going to be in a different form, but it definitely will not replace or overwrite the existing first document. So once it's DocuSigned, it'll come back in as a DocuSigned PDF. Theoretically, you could add it as a new version to the original, but most people don't like doing that. So there's lots of capabilities within our DocuSign workflows and the way we handle documents to handle most situations that you want to do. All right, so that concludes our Laserfiche webinar, CDI webinar on using not only DocuSign, but workflow, our Office integration, snapshot, and scanning. And thank you so much for your attendance. That concludes our session. I'm going to leave the session open here for additional questions, but that concludes our It's Time to Go Green webinar. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.